Smith here with the Langdon House Studios. Thank you so much for joining me once again. This is episode 4, getting started with mixing. I'm going to show you the nuts and bolts on how to do things. We're going to go over how to edit some things. We're going to go over in the box versus traditional mixing. We're going to go over some plugins that you should probably use or ones that you will use most of the time. Then we're going to go over some panning effects and then go over some automation. So first off, just as a quick review, in the past 3 episodes I've showed you the hardware that you would need to get started recording. I showed you the main functions of your DAW. I showed you a whole list of DAWs that you can use. I mainly use Reaper and a little bit of Pro Tools, but mostly Reaper. I also showed you how to set up your DAW to record at a very good quality and what's known as the industry standard nowadays. But today we're going to actually start mixing and recording a little bit and mixing and editing, and I'm going to show you all of that right now. So to begin with, let's go ahead and record a little bit of something, and then I'll show you how to do some basic editing and stuff like that. So I'm going to switch over here to my DAW screen so you can see it, and right here, over here on the left hand side is a big gray area, dark gray. I'm going to double click in there and it'll automatically pop up with a new track. I'm going to click this red button here. This is the arm button. You can also see up here on the left hand side of this little black bar here, there's a little speaker. If you click on that, you'll be able to hear yourself talking. You'll probably hear a little bit of an echo right now because of a delay between the microphone input and my computer processing the audio. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this back off. If you remember me telling you about the latency options, I'll show you that again. It's going to be in this window here. Right now I'm going through Direct Sound so you can hear me through the video editing software that I'm using. But if I go back over to ASIO, you'll be able to see I can click on the configuration and request the block size and all that. But all of that should be set up ahead of time, and you should be able to get all that set up to where you should have very little latency between when you speak into a microphone and when you hear it through your headphones or through your studio monitors, whichever you prefer. If you're recording by yourself, obviously you just want to use headphones, because if you use speakers, you're going to create what's known as a feedback loop, which is very easy to understand but a little complicated to explain. Speaker sound comes out through your speaker, which gets picked up through your microphone, which comes back out through your speaker, which comes back into your microphone, and just sits there in loops and loops and loops. So you eventually get a really loud ring or an overtone or something like that. You really don't want that, obviously. So when you're recording by yourself, I highly suggest using headphones and not speakers. So let's go back to our screen here. I'm going to go ahead and click on the record button down here, or you can push Control R on your keyboard. But I'm going to go ahead and click it here. And we are recording. As you can see, looks like doing a good job. La 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 la. All right, and we'll stop it and we'll save that. So as you can probably tell, there's what's known as background noise between when I was talking, when I was recording. So as you can see here, there's a lot of these little bitty sound waveforms, there we go, that are in between when I was talking. That's ideally very, very minimal or none at all. But as I'm sitting in my home studio right now, I don't have a lot of soundproofing in my studio, so it's a little bit noisy in here. And so you're seeing a lot of background noise in my recordings. So ideally that would not be there in your studio. But we're just going to ignore that for now, and I'm going to show you how to do some basic editing. With Reaper, it's default with where the cursor line here is located. So I'll shrink this up a little bit so you can see the cursor line better. If you have multiple tracks down below, it's usually easier to come up here to the timeline up on top and select where your cursor can go. You can also click and drag to highlight a certain section, or if you go up here to the arrow, you can click on it and drag it and move it back and forth. And you can probably hear the sound kind of messing around. Sounds a little funny. I'm going to isolate this piece of audio right here. So I'm going to zoom in so I can see it really well. And I'm going to get as close as I can. And then I'm going to select the media item here and push S on my keyboard. And then I'll go back over here to the end of it and push S on my keyboard. And now I've isolated that little sound bite. And then so now I can move that little sound bite wherever I want to put it. So I can even create a new file, or a new track, I mean, and I can take this piece and drag it down here to the new track and move it to wherever I want it, which is kind of cool. So if I want to put it here at the beginning, I can do that. Put my timeline back to the front. And then now I'll turn the recording off, so that's off now. And now you'll be able to hear it. La 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 la. And we are recording. So that's kind of cool. Let's say I want to move all of these around. I can do that if I want to. I can split this take up into as many takes as I want, or as many splits, as many sound bites as I want. I can move this around. I can delete it if I wanted to. The nice thing about this program, and usually all programs, is the undo button. If you click undo or Control Z, whatever you just deleted comes right back. And it undoes all of the editing you've done before, so I can continue pressing Control Z and all my edits go away. Everything I've moved, blah, 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 blah. Record arming, moving this back, bringing it back up here. And just like that, I am back to my original sound file. And there's all kinds of other things you can do. Like say if you want, like say here at the beginning, if you go to the very beginning of this sound file, or the sound recording bite, let me turn that back off. The cursor will change. You can kind of see that there. It'll change, and you can click over here and then drag this forward or backwards, like that. So that's another quick way of editing the front of any recording that you do. You can also do the same at the end. Just get over there to the edge, click it and drag it. It's pretty nice. Pro Tools does the same thing. So let's say I want to I'll split this just to show you. There's another way you can scoot things back and forth like this, and it'll do an automatic fade right there in the middle, so it'll blend those two takes together. I normally don't do that unless I've got some major editing that I've got to do, and it just makes the transition between this take and this take much smoother, which is kind of nice if you have got a drum set or something, or a percussion sound like a clave or a wood block or something, and you want to manually move one block hit to a different spot in your song or project. You can cut it, isolate it, and then move it to wherever you want, and then you can blend it together with anything else or with any other takes that you may have. Another nice thing is there's a fade in option here in Reaper that's automatic. This is a default setting in Reaper. So if you go up to the top left hand corner of your take, you can see it turns into a little hill looking icon. You click there and you can drag it back and forth as far as you want it, and this will fade in your take. Also, if you right click while that icon is highlighted, you can choose the type of fade you want. So like an S fade, or a straight fade, or all different types of curves and different kinds of fade ins. Just play around with it and find out which fade is appropriate for what you're wanting, and just go with that option. And you can do the same thing on the end over here. So if I bring this over, I can right click and choose which fade in, or fade, in this case fade out, that I would want, which is pretty handy. I normally just leave it at the default setting, which is that curve right there, because that just works best for me. Okay, so you just recorded something, you like the recording, you want to keep that take. Let's put some plugins on here. To do that in Reaper, you'll want to go to this little box that says Effects, and you click on that, and this whole list of plugins will pop up. Most of these on this list are default plugins in Reaper. There's a few that I've downloaded that I've included with this list, but as of right now, I'm going to show you the basic ones. I'm going to show you Re-EQ, which is a default EQ plugin with Reaper that I use all the time. And I'm going to hit play on my DAW, and while it's playing, you'll be able to see the waveform as it's playing in real time. And we are recording. As you can see, looks like doing a good job. La 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 la. And we are recording. Okay, so that's pretty cool. So you can see in real time the waveform as it's outputting through your DAW, and you can adjust your EQ with these knobs here. You can click and drag. You can use the knobs down here to move it back and forth to a specific frequency, how much you take out, how much you put in, and you can also adjust the curve size, thinner, so you can get really, really specific, or you can be really, really broad. So just play around with that setting as much as you want. You can also reset everything back to the way it was. The other nice thing about Reaper's default EQ program is that you can add as many bands, what's known as bands, as you want. So I can just keep sitting here and adding them. I can have up to 24 bands right now, and that's probably a little too much. If you have more than 10 EQ bands, there's something wrong with your recording, and you probably need to fix it. So in most cases, the 4-band default with this plugin is great for most people. So like the default low shelf here, you know, everything below this certain frequency will get lowered or raised. The 4th band is a default high shelf, which does the exact same thing, only with high frequencies. You can use this as a cutoff if you want, or what's known as a low pass, which I will switch it over to low pass so you can see what that looks like. So anything above this frequency of 5,000 is cut off. So if you have a lot of hiss or a lot of really high-pitched noise, and you just want a low noise, like say if you're doing bass guitar or something, and you just want the lower frequencies, you can set a low pass option, and it'll cut off all the higher frequencies and just give you the low frequencies, which can be really nice. You can also do the same thing with bass drum or anything like that. Sometimes with vocals, especially with female vocals or a high-pitched male vocal, you'll want to do a high-pass filter, which is the exact opposite of a low-pass filter. Anything below a certain frequency will be cut off, and anything above that will be let through, which is why they call it a high pass. All those high frequencies get to pass through and not get filtered out. And that just gets rid of a lot of your pops and punches, or even some background noise that you may encounter while you're recording. So it cleans up your signal quite a bit, gets rid of a lot of mud. So that's a very, very handy default plugin. I use it all the time. It's a very, very good plugin. Another plugin you'll probably want to look at eventually is what's called Recomp, which is their default compressor. This is also a very robust compressor plugin. It's got a lot of default, what's known as stock presets, where, and you can see I've made one down here at the bottom. But these are all very good. Just play around with those and see what they do. The next one you'll want to look at is Reverb. So I don't use this plugin much anymore, but you can. This is a default Reverb plugin for Reaper that actually does very well. I went ahead and made a basic preset, which is a good starting point, a launching point for all of my projects that I have been using. I normally don't use this unless it's for percussion or something like that. But I'll go ahead and show you what this reverb sounds like. And we are recording, as you can see. So you can hear there's just a little bit of echo in there, which is kind of nice. And you can adjust all the parameters for that, for, you know, size of room, how long you want the echo to last, how loud you want the reverb, blah, 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 blah. There's a lot that goes into this. Most of these programs you just want to mess around with and get them to where you like them. So just play around with them. Another one that's used a lot for effect is what's known as a delay. And I'll go ahead and plug this in here. So what this does is, if you remember listening to really old recordings, like say the recordings back in the 50s or 60s, they had a really in your face delay effect where it sounded like they were in a really small room with concrete walls and their sound was just echoing back and forth. That's what delay does, and it's very cool. It's a very nice little effect that you can use. I use it mainly on guitar, or on if I'm doing a vocal effect that I want to use, that I want, you know, a delay effect to be heard. That's usually what this will be used for. Another thing that this can be really handy for is if you're using, if you have a multi-mic setup where you're recording, say, like a conga, let's say, and you have a mic on top and a mic on bottom, and you have a room mic out, you know, picking up room sound, and you want all those to line up without the delay of, so when you hit the conga, the mics that are going to pick up the sound first are going to be the one on top and the one on bottom, and then the room mic is going to be second. So there's a delay because of the way sound works in physics. There's a delay between when you hit it and between when this room mic picks up the sound. Delay will help compensate for that if you want the sound to be instant. So you can delay the sound from the first two mics to line up with the room mic, so there's no echo sound. It starts right away. So that can be another useful way to use a delay plugin, which I have used before. It's kind of nifty. Another thing you'll want to look at is what's known as a gate. So if you're recording a drum set like bass drum or snare drum or something like that, gates come in really, really handy because they eliminate all the background noise and just give you the sound you want. The way gates work is they will only let sound through when it reaches a certain volume level. So let's say you have a bass drum that you want just the bass drum sound and none of the background noise of like the snares or the toms or the cymbals coming through that microphone. You can set up your gate, and you'll have to play with the input level, but you can set up your gate to where as soon as the input signal from that microphone reaches a certain decibel level, then the gate allows the sound to come through and then shuts it back off when it's done. So that's basically all the gates do. And it's really nifty and really handy with bass drums, or kick drums at least, to eliminate all that background noise so you don't get a lot of, you know, noise. Essentially, you just get that nice clean hit of the bass drum. Cleans up your sound quite a bit. It's quite handy, and I use it a lot on kick drums for drum sets. The next thing you want to look at is, you know, just mess around with all of these other plugins. There's all kinds of them. They just do a great job of, you know, providing you with any kind of effect that you can possibly imagine that you may want to use on your project. So just look into those. The other one I'm going to show you is one that if you're using vocals, recording vocals, especially singing vocals all the time, you'll probably want to look into this program called Melodyne. And this is a very robust program. And I'm actually not going to dive too deeply into this plugin because I'm going to devote a whole episode on how Melodyne actually works, how to use Melodyne, and all the different functions and processes that it goes through. And it's a very, very, very robust program. So finally, let's get into panning. With Reaper, there's a couple ways you can do this. Right here, there's a little knob. And when I highlight the track, you can see it says center right here. This little knob allows me to pan the audio output all the way to the right, all the way to the left, or anywhere in between. And if I'm over here on 30% right by accident and I want it to be centered, all I have to do is just double click this knob and it centers it right back up, which is really nice. Another way you can do this, and I'm going to show you via my mixer window. Let me drag it back over here. So I had to expand my fader so you could see it, but right here is a giant knob for panning all the way to the right, all the way to the left, or anywhere in between that you can possibly think of. Pretty handy. So another way to use panning is what's known as automation. Now automation can handle a number of different things, including plugins for any track that you use. So any plugin that you use through Reaper will have certain parameters that you can automate to tell the plugin what to do at a certain time in your project. And in this case, I want the computer to pan my vocal from right to left and then back to center, just as an example, so you can see how this works. So in order to bring that up in Reaper, you go to the next button right next to the plugin button. There's a button called Trim. If you click on that, this box pops up. And right away, you have default views of what you can use. You can do a volume, you can do pan, width you don't normally have to worry about, trim volume, and mute. So in this case, we want to use pan. So I'll click on pan and it automatically defaults to visible and arm. So you can shut this off if you want, so it doesn't do it, but normally if you're using this, you'll want it armed. So we want it to go from our left speaker to the right speaker to the front, right in the middle. So the way to do that is, if you just do this, it's going to pan it all the way to the left, or excuse me, to the right. And if you go the other way, it's all the way to the left. But in this case, I want it to do it at a certain time. So I want it to start on the left, just like that. And then I want it to go all the way to the right at a certain point. So I will hold down the control button on my keyboard, and you can see my icon change to a little pin, what looks like a pen or a pencil, which allows me to draw or just click and create an envelope point. So if I select that and drag it, now it'll pan all the way to the left. However, I don't want it to pan while it's speaking or while it's talking. So to do that, I'll just make another point, drag it all the way back up. And then I can line it up to pretty much where it is instantaneous, where it goes to the right. So now let's listen to that. And we are recording, as you can see. So as you can tell, it went automatically from left to right, which is very cool. And now I want it to go back to the center. So I'll create two little points, take this one, line it up to the center. So now everything after that will be back in the center channel. And we are recording, as you can see, looks like. But if you want it to sound like it goes from one point to another quickly while it's going through the playback, I'll show you what that does. So I'll create a point here, and I'll create a point here, and here, and here. So now, while it's playing back, And while I'm talking, it'll pan all the way to the right and then pan back all the way to the left. So let's listen to that. Doing a good job. La 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 la. So this is just an example. I mean, unless you're doing some kind of effect where you want a quick pan like that, you most likely wouldn't do stuff like that. But it's just an example to show you how it works. But let's say you have different takes that you want to use, and at different times in the song you want it to be at a certain spot in your sound field. That's the best way to do it without having to mess with any knobs on your interface or anything like that. It's all done in the box, and the DAW does it the same way every time, which is usually what you want. So to get rid of all these points, let's say you've got all these edits and you decided you don't want them in there anymore. You can just right click anywhere in this envelope field, go to select all points. Now you notice all the points have been highlighted. They're all solid colors. Right click again, delete points, and they all go away. And then you can start from scratch if you want, or do whatever you want to, which is really nice. Now volume is the same way. Volume for Reaper is a default setting at 0 decibels. You can change this to make it louder. You can make it softer. We'll start off pretty loud here. I'll show you how that sounds. Oops. And then I'll make it get really, really soft. And then I'll change the volume while it's happening, or while you can hear it talking. So let's hear what this sounds like. And we are recording. Looks like. So that's another great way of automating your volume levels in all of your recordings. It's especially handy if you have, say, a guitar soloist or any kind of like acoustic guitar or something you want louder at a certain point in the song without having to move your fader all the time. This is a great way to make the DAW do that every time, and you get the exact volume level every time, all the time, which is great. Another cool feature with automation, especially with Reaper, if you have the correct interface to do it with, is that you can do all of these adjustments in real time as it's playing, and the DAW will remember what you did. So I'm going to show you how to do that really quickly here. And so what you're going to click on is the trim box again, and it says it right here in the middle, automation mode. Right now it's at trim read. We want to go to right. What I'm going to show you is while I'm playing it, I'm going to move my fader back and forth on my control surface on my X32, and the envelope on Reaper will move in accordance to what I do with the fader. I'll show you how this looks. And we are recording. As you can see, looks like doing a good job. La 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 la. That's kind of cool. It comes in very handy if you're wanting to do a specific movement, you know, that adds that human touch, and it comes in really handy sometimes. So now that we've done that, we want to reopen that window, go back to trim read, and now Reaper will play exactly what you inputted already. And we are recording. As you can see, looks like doing a good job. La 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 la. Okay, so pretty cool. Another cool feature is if you want to see what you did on your control surface and you want to see how far your fader went up and down, you can have the DAW repeat the movements on the soundboard that you inputted earlier. So let me show you how that works. Open up that window again, and I want to go to just read. So when I play this back, the fader on my soundboard should move up and down at the same time that I recorded it into Reaper. So let's hit play and see if that works. And we are recording. As you can see, looks like doing a good job. La 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 la. And we are recording. So that's a handy little feature. I really like that feature sometimes because it reminds me as to what I did with the fader. If it's too much or if it wasn't enough, I can watch what I did and then repeat that movement if I so want to. Plus, it's kind of fun to watch. I think I'm going to go ahead and end the video right here. The next episode, we're going to look at Melodyne. We're going to go over why Melodyne is used, how it's used, and the difference between it and what's known as auto-tune. There is a huge difference, and there's actually a lot of artistry that goes into using Melodyne in the right way. I hope to see you next time. Thank you for watching once again, and we'll see you in episode 5, The Industry Secret Melodyne.